Mark Carney was asked in an interview why people would consider investing in Canada, and this was just sort of pointing out that people don't always think of Canada as a place to invest. It's strange to me that they don't, because we've got an incredibly well-educated population, we've got a stable government, we've got a reasonably good public health care system, and we've got natural resources like no other country in the world. And really, that is what people are usually investing in when they're investing in Canada. But his first thing that he said, and it was kind of half jokingly, said, think about investing in Canada because we abide by the rule of law. Now, everybody in the room knew what that meant, and it was a comparison with the US right now. And what is the rule of law? I mean, the rule of law is that we are governed by the law. We are not ruled by rulers, we're ruled by the law. We all are expected to apply the same law, and it's supposed to be applied fairly, and generally speaking, it is applied fairly, and not to the extent maybe that we want, but the world is not ideal. But the point is that we follow the law and abide by the law, and everyone is ruled by the law, from the government all the way down. We're all ruled by the law. We're not ruled by the government. We've got a Charter of Rights, we've got all sorts of freedoms, but we have the rule of law. And so if you have a contract dispute, you can reasonably expect that that contract dispute is going to be fulfilled in law. The government is not going to prosecute you out of political spite. The government is not going to be issuing pardons to people because they're connected. The government is going to abide by the law. They're not going to just, send one level of government in to a jurisdiction to run roughshod over the population. And so you've got predictability. And that was the reason that he said that. And of course, we've seen in the States where the rule of law is failing. I'm sort of half counting on the U.S. Supreme Court, but I know it's a political institution. But as I said in a previous video, I don't see how the tariffs are going to withstand that challenge at the U.S. Supreme Court. And it sounds like from the hearing that I may be right about that one. But the point is, we've got now a judge who's stepping down in the U.S. because he can no longer fulfill his role as a judge and now wants to be a critic of the government. We've got the U.S. Department of Justice has lost so many lawyers because they are not going to be party to basically the rule of law falling apart on their watch. I would prefer that they were more courageous about it rather than stepping down, but it's an individual decision and everybody's got to make that choice. And of course, we've got the U.S. government committing crimes. I mean, war crimes, not even war crimes, just crimes against humanity, murdering people in boats indiscriminately, sending in forces into towns and cities to commit crimes. I mean, it's the rule of law has fallen apart there. You're no longer ruled by the law, you're ruled by a capricious dictator in the US. And if you're a company looking to invest that money that you've got, or you're just an investor, a private investor, and you're looking at where would you invest? Would you invest somewhere where the government is just going to willy-nilly take your company from you? No, you don't want to invest in that circumstance. Would you invest in a country where the government's going to come along and say, you've got to give us 5% of your company? Like, of course, we've seen the U.S. government do this now, right? Demanding shares in companies. NVIDIA is one. No, you don't want to invest in that. Why would you, put yourself at risk for that? End up being doged or something like that, losing your contract with the government because the government decides that they don't like you and you haven't praised the leader enough. These are all things that are fundamentally risky about investing in the U.S. And we're going to watch, after we've seen this government shutdown, the damage that that's done to the economy, which is just bad management. And we've seen the tariffs and the damage that that's doing to the U.S. economy. Of course, we've seen it with the farmers, but we've seen lots of people just don't have any money. Americans can't afford to travel. They're broke. They're tapped out. And the economy is just on the slide. They've lost thousands and thousands of jobs. Canada increased like 65,000 jobs in the last month, something along that line. So, from Mark Carney's perspective, he's floating that out there to remind investors, look, Canada is a stable place. Canada has been stable. We've had stable government. Sure, we've flirted with authoritarianism, but the Conservatives are now on the slide and are moving towards being a marginal party. We still have very strong courts. We don't have political appointee judges the way that they have in the U.S. We have independent courts that are an actual check on the system. And the checks and balances from federal government to provincial government to the courts and everything, structured by the charter and the laws that are existing, is a very suitable way of protecting individual investors and protecting their money to ensure that there's predictability in the economy. And so the rule of law, when he says it as a bit of a joke, as a comparison to the US, it is of fundamental importance if you are investing anywhere, to know that your investment can't just be stolen by the government, and that your investment is in a place where there's long-term stability, where you can see long-term stability and expect that. So you've got the rule of law protecting you as an investor, and protecting the long-term integrity of any company that you've decided to put your money into. So it made a lot of sense. It was, but it was an interesting comment because it was quite surely a dig at the U.S. and the fact that the U.S. is basically ruled now not by law but by a capricious dictator who is more interested in people fawning over him than making sure that the people are covered, the economy is functioning well. We're creating jobs in Canada, and the U.S. is losing jobs. So if you're looking for somewhere to invest, Canada's the place to invest. We have natural resources, an abundance of it, probably more than any. I mean, we're the second largest landmass in the world, right? And we've got natural resources for mining, resource extraction, like no other country in the world, and we can do it. We know how to do it smartly. We know how to do it safely, and we do it in a stable government, stable economy, stable court systems. That's why the rule of law is such an advantage for Canadian companies and anybody who's interested in investing in Canada.